People ask me who I studied with. I say Leo Connellan. That's who I studied with, Leo Connellan.
Coming up, why Leo Connellan, one of the country's most respected poets, can't stop writing about Maine. A native son comes home on a good read.
Production of A Good Read on Maine PBS is made possible in part by the Davis Family Foundation.
We own our sea in Maine. We rode the highest fucking wave and broke it with the big engines of our power boats throwing oil in the eyes of the tide.
Hi, I'm Sandy Phippen, your host of A Good Read. Leo Connellan may be the poet laureate of Connecticut, but there's no mistaking that much of his poetry is written about the place he deeply regrets leaving. Connellan was born in Portland, grew up in Rockland, and left Maine at an early age. He is now compared to the best of America's living poets, and it's his loss as well as ours that he's not back here in Maine writing and teaching full-time.
On a tombstone in Thomaston, Maine cemetery, are letters spelling out my ancestor, carved like donuts in granite. All the sea did not get was his name. It was before the Rockland breakwater, holding ocean undertow with a stone judo punch. In the old days, as the boats came in at sunset, fatigue on the faces of worn-out winners told us the sea had lost. Now, the ocean will never win. We own our sea in Maine. We rode the highest fucking wave and broke it with the big engines of our power boats throwing oil in the eyes of the tide. Now, fish fly ice-packed to Berkeley, California. Green profit floats down through our pines, and our graveyard is slow filling in this infancy of Earth orbit.
So Leo, when did you first know you were a poet?
Well, when I was here in Rockland High School, I was sort of a daydreamer, and I was pretty sick as a child. My mother had died when I was 7, and I had very frail when I was a child. So she had some leather-bound books in the house, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Amy Lowell, and I read them, and I was egotistical, foolish enough to think, gee, maybe I could do that. Then in high school, a wonderful woman named Dorothy Ledwick, who is now 89 years old as we speak, sent a poem of mine to the Scholastic Scope, and it won.
That's called The New Leaf? That's the New Leaf?
The Leaf.
The Leaf.
The Leaf. And, you know, Joyce Kilmer had written his poem, Trees. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree who may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, a tree who looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, upon whose boughs white snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. And Miss Ledwick asked us to put a leaf on Joyce Kilmer's tree. So I wrote at 16, I hang upon a tree in spring, my beauty glowing bright. Through summer until early fall, I never think of flight. But as days wear on, I'm bored and yearn to fly. So don't be scared if as you walk you see a leaf go by. I spin, turn in splendor true, and somersaults I do. As I go, I wonder why I cannot start anew, once more to hang in beauty's eyes a young fragrant leaf. To think that I've grown old and gray is hardly my belief. Oh, some people think me burned in fire, or dust in slow decay, when all the while I'm in the trees from which I'll bud next May. So that won the first prize, and I never wanted to do anything else.
How would you define poetry? We always have to ask that, I think.
Well, I think a poem shows and stops and trusts the reader to come to the poem, whereas I think a story has to tell it. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's about one person or a set of situations that have to be resolved. The poem can create the image for you and allow you to come to it. In my own work, if I give you an example of what I mean by creating an image and stopping, if I said to you, what is an assassin? You said to me, somebody who kills somebody. What does an assassin look like? Anybody. Oh, you mean if I wrote, I am hidden within who you think I am, that's all I have to do for a poem.
That's right.
You say, well, I don't see what you mean. Well, is the assassin, if he's dressed like a priest, do you think he's a priest until he pulls a weapon and shoots somebody? So was not the assassin hidden within who you think he is? So it's, up until the 20th century, we rhymed everything, and I don't know why. Students, I say to students, the most wonderful thing about learning is to admit that you don't know anything. And once you've done that, you have a chance.
That's right.
Robert Browning, for 25 years, he paid a tremendous price. Academics like Alfred Lord Tennyson and Thomas Carlyle vilified him for his poem Sordello, in which he took risks. He tried to create an idea in poetry that if I give you an image and stop, your mind will fill it in. Now, in the 20th century, we've had great poets like Robert Frost and Louise Bogan and Edna St. Vincent Millay. You can't beat her.
Did you read her when you were in high school?
Well, we all read Renaissance. We all knew the Edna St. Vincent Millay story, but at least what we heard.
You knew she was from here.
I suspected when everybody told me. The point is, so the thing is that I started to look at poems. What is it that Robert Frost does that I think is good? And then I'd ask myself, why? And I'd realize that a writer's job in his lifetime is to take the next step. I'm 70 years old. Between the time I was 16 and right now, I've written my books. And until God takes me away, I'll be writing. I'm writing a new book now, and I'm writing some new poems now. I used to do things what kids do. I used to cut clotheslines. I used to soap windows. Little things that, you know, it takes you a long time to come home and know nobody has to forgive you. So this is my poem, Warrenock, because the Indians were here once. It is my night for tears. Pine tree, umbrella of blueberries. I am gone forever from Lime City, vanished as though an Indian never slid across Chickawaukee Lake, like all night on a match flame, your old county road. Your back alleys no longer know me. The boy who carried ball bearings through them in the pockets of his mud-crusted knickers to kiss marbles into the slush of spring. The houses that saw me cut clotheslines in the dark cowardice of Halloween pretend they did not. And the Penobscot Sea is cold blue to my middle years.
Now, you've said in the past, you said that people write either because they're absolutely brilliant or because they have something that disturbs them.
Well, many people, many scholars, like W.H. Auden said of William Butler Yeats, the country of Ireland hurt him into poetry. The problem of Ireland and the starvation, and you know, Jonathan Swift's great essay, A Modest Proposal.
Yes.
You all remember that. You
Yes.
know, like the Irish children were starving, the English would not open their warehouses, so he looked at the children and he wanted to disturb people. So he said, we have this state fair where we have cotton candy and we sell food. Why don't we cook the babies and sell them at the fair? And of course, this kind of thing shocked people and caused the grain warehouses to be open. Well, in the same way, I think that a poem has to be about something that's important to consider. I mean, I love poems about bumblebees and violets and flowers, and God bless the people who write them. They're not particularly, I don't have the ability and talent to write them. I can't.
Your first poems when you were a kid at Rockland High School were about death. That disturbed you then, right?
Someday I'll be dead, and The Leaf. The Leaf was a bit about life. But I wrote another poem that I've been well known for called Someday I'll Be Dead when I was 16. But the answer to your question is, if it interests me, I want to see how I can make it interest you. And I have to trust you, that unknown person that I will never see, that if I pitch my ball game right, you'll know what I mean. In other words, it's trusting mankind, that people sneeze in Alabama the same that they sneeze here. Sometime I'll go into a classroom and I'll just sit with the kids, and the kids say, I don't like this poetry. I don't understand this poetry. So I'll be sitting and I'll go, and I'll be talking to the kid and I'll go, and I'll be talking to the kid and I'll go. By that time the kid winces and I say, why are you wincing? Am I hitting you? Because you're wincing because you imagine that unless I've got a piece of wood in there, it must hurt. And you already understood poetry right there. I created an image to you and you comprehended it. So I don't know if that's explaining anything to you.
Yes, it is. We're getting there. When you were a kid, though, at Rockland High School and around town here, did you see yourself as a joiner or one of the boys, or were you a loner?
I was very frightened and ridiculed. I don't think that my father was very happy that I was going to be a poet. He didn't know whether that meant radical. What is a poet? You can't round third base and spike somebody in the ankle. You're not a red-blooded man. Can't blow a deer apart and skin the deer. So
your father was a coach. He was a jock, right?
He was a coach. Well, I don't know. The word jock in those days was in a pack of Camel cigarettes. It's like you were a real jock if you opened up a pack of cigarettes.
But your brother played sports.
My brother Jimmy was a very good athlete. Very small, but very good at basketball and pretty good at baseball.
But you didn't play sports. You tried a little bit?
No, not really. I was all, I was like all hands and feet. I mean, I really couldn't play. So I really didn't think of myself as anyone but someone trying to survive and get away from here.
Right.
And I didn't really think I was ever going to come back. So it's really...
So you left town at 19. You left
19.
Rockland at 19.
I went into the Army for 18 months. When I got discharged, I went to New York City, because I could find part-time jobs like pulling a hand truck in the garment district, or even washing dishes. I could make myself enough money to live and so write.
So Greenwich Village became like your school, your university?
Well, not intentionally, but because a lot of writers lived on the east side because it was poor, and your opportunity was in New York within walking distance if you could sell yourself. But then I hitchhiked to 41 of the 48 states, and that's what...
Crossing America comes from.
That's right. 41 of the 48 states, my book about hoboing and hitchhiking. Then I came back to New York, and in 1983, when I was over 50 years of age, I won the Shelley Memorial Award from the Poetry Society.
Of America.
Of America, and things began to slowly change. I began to get invited. I was offered a job with the Connecticut State University system in 1982, and I'm still with them.
Let's describe Rockland. I keep wanting to go back to when you were a kid. How has Rockland changed? What do you see now when you walk around Rockland compared to when you were growing up here?
I don't know how you do that. I think that each generation brings in new people. I would say that the basic Maine person has a suspicion of anyone who can take vacations. They have no money here. Someone comes in and that person would want you to think that they're smart and bright. But like on the Today Show in New York, they make grinning idiots of themselves. They come up here with their flappy hats and their mirror glasses and their orange little shots, and they spend money, and we have a love-hate relationship with them because we need their money, but we think their horse is something, part of the posterior of a horse.
You write about though the Depression years and the war years when you were growing up. You know, Rockland was obviously a very different place then. I mean, well, it was a working man's town.
There were a lot of things that were there then that aren't now, and you had a lot of very honorable people who worked fishing and who worked struggling, and they were destitute, but they couldn't conceive what was wrong. And if you looked at them the wrong way, they'd vent their stress by putting a pool cue across your forehead. So I tried to write about the futility that existed in a place where people do not have a lot of opportunity. It's still true in Maine. Down the dark pine green, in deep blue quiet, the flippers of sea waves slapping inches off the shore, scent of deer moss and fern soured all the silence shattered by the abrupt dog bark of gun blast, rapping the knuckles of water that let a stranger's boat lie bobbing, and the foreigner lobstering. Take my virgin daughter, if I don't kick your teeth out. Take my worn-out woman, skinny on my provision, but threaten our living, thief, in my salt-flowing refrigerator. I'll take your life. That mentality is born of despair that is not recognized. I am never, it's like in the Depression. What happened to the generation that followed the Depression was people like your father and mother, if my dreams were shattered, who are you to have dreams?
Yes, that's
and
right.
I think that it was more that with my father. He just looked upon me and said, you know, if you were J. Paul Getty or if you were Robert Lowell and you had $2 million, you could go and play at this poetry. What are you going to do to make a living? But I did what I wanted to do, and now...
and you succeeded. You did it.
I don't know. You haven't succeeded till you're dead and somebody... I haven't succeeded if my work does not reach anyone.
Were you writing early on in your drinking days in Greenwich Village in the late 40s during that period?
I write every day of my life. I once almost drank myself to death. I really did. I mean, I drank too much.
You were in the White Horse Tavern the night Dylan Thomas did that, didn't he?
Well, I was in the White Horse Tavern with Dylan Thomas many nights without even realizing who he was. He was a good guy. He just came up and paid table hopped. He had this book, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Dog. One of the best poets in England, David Gascoigne, and he were invited over here to New York. And this is the first time poetry readings as such really occurred. We all heard that Dylan was going to Columbia University and getting paid to read his work. And that was sort of the beginning of it. Writers like Delmore Schwartz would just leave Syracuse University and come down to the village. But
you mentioned Syracuse. That's the first university that asked you for reading, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1968. And I've been one of the lucky ones because, I mean, it took me a long time. But as you know, I've read my poems a lot of places. I recorded my poetry at the Library of Congress, and I read it like the university, like Columbia and
Yale and Harvard.
Yale and Harvard, 3 times at Harvard and 3 times at Yale. So
now,
it's my good looks, though. It's not my it's not my poetic
and your
talent.
charm, Leo.
No, it isn't my charm. I'm not charming, but I'm appealing.
Yes, that's right. I meant to say appealing. The critics say you're unique. They say you're not an academic poet. You're a working man's poet. You're a man of the people. Critics have to ask themselves why they'd even look at my work, and then they have to find a reason, so unique's as good as any. Yes, that's right. You know. Do you see yourself as unique? No, I see myself as Leo. He'll be in later. Unique will be... He'll be in later? Yeah, he'll be in later this afternoon. Did you find what you were searching for when you left Maine? You know, when you struck out across the country? I was always looking to come home, but in this state, we don't want to pay. There are no jobs here. In Ohio and New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Massachusetts, there are paying jobs for writers. In the state of Maine, there just are none. So I've come up here, as you know, and read at the University of Maine, and I've read at Bowdoin, and I've read at Bates on invitation and been paid very well. Yes. There was no offer for a residency. So, like so many other writers who aren't connected with universities, you've had to spend your life working at other jobs. I mean, you were a salesman. You name it. I was one of the best fry cooks. I mean, I could cook you soft scrambled eggs to the point where I give waitresses headaches, and I tell them that if they take 2 eggs and put it in a hot pan with a little grease and spin it fast, and as they spin it, they put it on a plate. You know what they're going to come out with? Soft scrambled eggs. What do you think of creative writing courses, creative writing programs? Well, people ask me who I studied with. I say Leo Connellan. That's who I studied with, Leo Connellan. But you read a lot. I mean, you read Hart Crane, you read poets that did influence you. I think the statement you ought to make, which I hope is true, is I have had curiosity. I made it my business to try to learn my trade. Let me put it to you like that. And I'll never succeed. But you know the beautiful thing?
Failure is what counts. Failure and honest hard work. There isn't anybody who lives long enough to totally succeed.
I want to talk about your longer poems because it's your long poems that are so wonderful and important.
In the August 1999 issue of Down East magazine, there is a literary map. It says Edward Ellington Robinson, Tilbury Town Gardener, and down here it says Leo Connellan, Lime City.
Right. Maybe we should explain to people why Rockland was called Lime City, first of all.
Well, Rockland is called Lime City because we have quarries that were limed for the granite, that were mined for the granite, and one of the examples is the Flatiron Building in New York City. And you can go outside of Rockland today, and you better watch it on a foggy morning that you don't fall swap into the quarry.
They're still outside of town,
They're still outside of town waiting for you with open arms.
Besides lime, Rockland is noted for lobsters, and that seems to be your symbol, your recurring symbol in a lot of your finest poems.
I was trying to look at the central controlling idea of what would tell you about what I want you to know today, yesterday, 100 years from now. And maybe I came close and maybe I didn't, but I'm not embarrassed to say I tried.
Right. No, you shouldn't be. Good heavens, no. How about some of your other long poems? You wrote By the Blue Sea. Could you tell us how long it takes to write one of the long poems?
10 years.
That's how long that one took?
No, By the Blue Sea probably took about 3 years, and In Lobster Night probably took about 3 years. My poem Lobster Claw took about 4 years. The Clearwater Lobster Water Country took me 12 years. Crossing America took me 10 years.
Yes, and you published parts of, like, Clear Blue Lobster, you published it a little bit at a time.
Well, the Clear Blue Lobster Water Country, Massachusetts Poems, Part 1 was published in Massachusetts Poems. Part 2, Shadow House, which I thought would ruin my career because it's about psychosexual, mad, insane people, it won the Shelley Memorial Award.
Right.
That's the one that won the award.
Right.
And the third book, The Clear Blue Lobster Water Country, came about by accident. But all three of them took about 12 years.
What about Maine now? I mean, will you ever come back to Maine to live? Is it a possibility?
Well, you know, the point is if my pension is enough, but, you know, I stay where I have a chance of living decently and where I have a chance of making money, where people are respected for if they have talent, but I want to be loved. I need to be held and hugged and caressed. And when Maine wants me and sends for me, maybe there might be a chance. This one was for the good people that I grew up with, called Amelia, Mrs. Brooks of my old childhood. I have come to you again. I was job training in New Jersey, and a letter came from someone we did not know. I asked my wife to read it to me over the telephone in vague, irritated curiosity, and it was from someone I had never heard of. Your sister-in-law? She admonished, you loved me so much, I ought to be ashamed at my neglect of you all these years. No, Melia doesn't live with us. No, Melia's across the bridge to Brewer in a nice nursing home. A nice nursing home near boys live nearby. No, Amelia don't know you're coming. I wrote you. It was my idea. I'll go telephone her now. You got a minute, haven't you? You'll go see her. This one resents. She can't put her finger on it, but there's something in the loose, free, easy way I materialize at her door from miles away within a week of receiving a letter she just dashed off for whatever reason. Or was it overwhelming for her to write? She can't put it into words, but what it is her kind has lost control of me. I move in and out and around them as I please and if I please. I got away. She knows I got away.
Visit our website for more information about A Good Read and the writers featured in this series, including a transcript of the interviews, biographies of each of the authors, a complete list of their published works, some tips on how to find those books, what's on their own must-read book list, and more.
Production of A Good Read on Maine PBS is made possible in part by the Davis Family Foundation.